Hi, this is Financial Advice with Dad, and I started researching all things money after I experienced what became known as the global financial crisis in 2008. And I started this channel to share what I learned because I realized if I knew then what I think I know now, my life would have been very different. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to try to cover the first 100 years of American money, and I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. So come on along for the ride. Okay, life as a colonist in the American colonies was not easy. You were fighting off natives and you were clearing fieldstone from your farms. When you hike in the New England area where I live, you come across these fieldstone walls. These were once homesteads. Backbreaking work. To make a living, we shipped England commodities like tobacco and wheat and rice. And that didn't cost very much. And in exchange, we imported expensive goods like clothing coming out of England's textiles factories. They were an industrial powerhouse at the time. They didn't provide any coin for our use. It was illegal to send British sterling silver from Britain to America. All the coin went the other way. What little coin we had available to use was Spanish silver or Portuguese gold that we got from trading with the West Indies. So trade imbalance meant all of this valuable coin specie went one way. This was explicitly part of the colonial model. It's designed to extract wealth from the colonies. So at first we bartered with the tobacco and pork as money, but to grow trade, we greased the skids by issuing our own bills of credit. This was credit that was extended by a local colonial loan office, and it was backed by future taxes to be paid. It might also be backed by loans backed up by property from somebody in the colony. But that was the value. But almost as soon as we started to issue this stuff, it started to depreciate. It also got very confusing because all the colonies were issuing their own, and some of them didn't manage it very well. Excessive printing to pay for military campaigns or for the king's use in the parlance of that day, poor tax receipts. Also, the local government siphoned off a bit to pay their own expenses. This all led to excessive issuance of bills, and as you might expect, putting out a lot of paper year after year. If you didn't retire them on time as promised, bills became worth less and less almost as soon as you issued them. So debts to English merchants were paid for with this depreciating paper, and that was a problem. Some of the merchants took their complaints to the Board of Trade in England and managed such matters. And eventually, by 1764, Parliament passed acts to ban use of these bills altogether, at least as legal tender. You could still issue them as loans. You couldn't send them back with merchants to England to pay your bills. And so that became a real problem. And when England finally got around to issuing the stamp tax in 1764 to pay for the French and Indian War, they kind of pushed the colonists over the edge. We have no money, they won't accept our paper, and they're laying on taxes. Okay, this set the stage for the Revolutionary War. But after we achieved political independence from this kind of tyranny, we had to achieve our own financial independence. So we started coining our own silver, but that wasn't enough. Alexander Hamilton wanted to expand the money supply with a national bank, but early presidents like Jefferson and Jackson, they had an agrarian economic outlook and they distrusted a strong central government. And so they resisted the charters of national banks. In fact, Jackson campaigned in 1832 explicitly to kill the bank, and he was swept into a landslide election victory. But that left America with no regulated money at all. And we ended up with 7,000 some odd banknotes from all the state and private banks circulating alongside what silver we had as money. And this was restraining growth. Gold tended to be hoarded by the banks as collateral for loans. By the time of the Civil War, the government was in crisis. Treasury was broke, America was in debt, and Congress had not been paid. In comes Abraham Lincoln with the newly formed Republican Party. And they were advocating for an American system as opposed to the British colonial system. And this involved tariffs and protectionism to help local industry grow, protect us from financial speculators and going into debt with the mother country. He was offered loans by the Eastern banking syndicates, but Lincoln was wise enough to refuse that. We couldn't pay them back. And so what he did is he issued a legal tender paper money called the greenback. You couldn't pay your debts with it, but it represented man hours of labor, and you could pay troops and munitions and everything else you need to fight the Civil War. $450 million. This touched off a debate in the country because it was an experiment with money. And there were a complex mix of interests. Some did not like this. The hard money people, the banks who had all the gold, didn't like this paper. This depreciated the value of debt. And so they wanted to protect their debts. They were lenders. But if you were a debtor, if you were a Western farmer or railroad trying to expand business out there where there wasn't many banks and there wasn't much availability of money, you welcome these greenbacks. This is the soft money position. And a little inflation didn't hurt if you were a debtor because your debts would get paid with depreciating currency. There were also a subset of these guys out in West, the Silverites, who liked silver and wanted silver to be part of the money system. America had lots of silver. By that time, silver mines were operating in Nevada. So these people were happy with silver as being part of this mix. So now you've got silver, gold, what little there was, paper greenbacks, bonds from the banks and from the government circulating as money. Okay. There were also some cultural and political factors. Populists of this era, as I mentioned, distrusted the Eastern elites, the banks that had all the gold, and this attracted farmers, labor, other constituencies, and really complicated the debate. But by 1879, the gold lobby won out, and the Treasury resumed giving out gold in return for dollar promissory notes. Dollar was gold backed. And the exchange rate was reestablished. The pre-war exchange rate, $20.67 an ounce, would get you an ounce of gold. In 1896, one last attempt to defeat this sort of gold-back monopoly on money. William Jennings Bryan at the Democratic Convention of that year, in his famous Cross of Gold speech, lobbied for silver. Let's keep silver as part of the money supply as well. Well, he lost to McKinley, and by 1900, gold was legally established as a de facto standard for the value of the dollar. Now, interesting enough, we continued to mint silver coins until 1964. More on that later. Interesting footnote to the period. A children's author named L. Frank Baum released a book called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. And this book had dazzling imagery with compelling parallels to the different interest groups that were debating money of that time. He wouldn't confirm or deny it, but it's widely believed to be so. And a movie was made in 1939, became part of American lore. If you came of age in the 60s or 70s, you saw it several times. It had memorable songs and characters and dazzling imagery, at least for the technology of the time. Interesting note on that. The slippers that could have taken Dorothy home at any time she wanted in the book were made of silver. But in the movie, those were changed to ruby. Maybe it made better use of the Technicolor technology used at the time. Okay, all of this is covered in a great book, difficult to read, but a great book covering that Civil War debate called The Greenback Error by a guy named Irwin Younger. If you want a summary of the different players and their interest at that time, I made myself a cheat sheet. I had to. It was too complicated. And I'll be happy to provide a PDF. Put your email to my email in the description of this video, and I will send you that. Okay, there's the whirlwind survey of the 19th century, development of money in America. 20th century had events of its own, and I'll cover those in future videos. All right, until next time.